In today's video, we're taking a look at some trade rumors around the Edmonton Oilers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Los Angeles Kings, and the Calgary Flames. Plus, we have some more RFA signings, and the Team USA has announced its captains for the World Junior Championships. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As you can see, I'm back home. This is not my normal recording studio, kind of in my living room here, but obviously just returned from being on the road, being on vacation, and actually heading back out in a couple of days as well on another road trip. So you'll see a couple of videos from home, a little bit from the home studio, and then back on the road we go here in a couple of days' time. So on to today's news. First up, we have some RFA signings I want to discuss. The first arbitration case that actually went through with this hearing is fully complete now. The arbitrator has announced its award for the Predators forward Trenin. He gets a 2-year deal at $1.7 million. So obviously when the arbitrator announces the award, they have the option to go with a 1 or 2 year term, unless of course the player is 1 year away from unrestricted free agency, and then of course at that point it has to be a 1 year deal. But for the case of Trenin, he is not, so it could be a 2. So 2 is what it is. Now the team was asking for 1.35, the player was asking for 2.4. So I think it's fair to say that you're probably able to say that the team kind of won this one. Certainly, it's in the middle of what they were each asking for, but at the same time, you're also looking at closer to what the team was looking for. I mean, it's about 350,000 more than what the team wanted, but it's 600,000 or actually 700,000 less than what the player was looking for. So certainly a much more team-friendly contract. So certainly that's done with. He's under contract, and away we go. As I mentioned before, players who go through the arbitration process don't typically have a long history with the team. Those situations can be quite contentious and kind of get a little bit nasty at times. Also have a signing in Vegas here as well. They've signed fourth line forward Keegan Kolesar. He gets a 3-year deal, a total of $4.2 million for an AAV of $1.4 million. He will be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the deal. Now, of course, this is a pretty good signing for Vegas. Obviously, Kolesar plays a good checking role, physical play, drops the gloves a little bit, but that does put them $3.56 million over the cap. But of course, that's not such a huge issue for them. They do have the Shea contract that they had acquired from the Montreal Canadiens, which has an AAV of 7.857. So of course, they can go above the cap in that much amount. So that essentially gives them about $4.3 million in space. But they still have 3 RFAs that are not signed, including Nikolai Waugh, Nicholas Hague, as well as Jake Leschyshyn. So Leschyshyn's not going to get a lot of money. He'll get under $1 million. Could even be a 2-way deal. So that's not such an issue. But Hague and Waugh are definitely on for sure 1-way deals, and definitely could total more than $4.3 million as well. I would not be shocked if the Vegas Golden Knights are somewhat forced into trading somebody here in another cost-cutting move with either a future return, it could even be future considerations. I mean, if they couldn't get anything from Max Pacioretty because of the situation, they had to give him away. They may not get much for anybody else either, right? So we might see another player dealt here in a similar fashion. It could even be one of these players that need to be signed. That is a remote possibility. There's lots of teams looking for defense help, so Hague would certainly be attractive for sure. So we'll have to wait and see, but the Vegas Golden Knights are not done unless they can get these guys signed for cheap, but I'm not sure that they can get Hague and Waugh both under 4.3, but we'll have to see how those negotiations go. We still have plenty of time before camp. On to some other news around signings. Of course, you saw the big news, I'm sure by now, on the Calgary Flames inking Jonathan Huberdeau to an 8-year contract extension. That came really late last night. I put up a video here on the channel this morning discussing the 8-year deal, $10.5 million. Now their attention turns to Mackenzie Weegar, the other big piece acquired in the Matthew Tkachuk trade with the Florida Panthers. Word is that that's now they're going to be their focus and to get him extended if they're able to. Now, of course, all indications are that he's certainly willing to talk and explore it. The fact that Huberdeau signed probably increases the chances that Weegar stays too. No guarantees, of course. They do have a bit of a crowded and expensive blue line. Of course, if Weegar gets let's say he gets a 6-7 year extension, That's going to put him he's already 28 years old. That's going to put him to his mid, going on late 30s. You've got Anderson under contract for 4 more years, a couple more years of Hanifin, a couple more years of Tanev, who's in his early 30s. Of course, they just re-signed Oliver Shillington. They re-signed Zadorov. It's not that they have a heck of a blue line. And at this point, if they're able to keep them all and go into the season like this, it's certainly going to be a strong point. But I do think it's fair to say that they're going to definitely have players not playing as much as they're used to in some capacity here. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Calgary Flames traded a defenseman and maybe try to get back some forward help. They do have a decent top 6. Of course, they lost Gaudreau, Tkachuk, Huberdeau comes in. That's a big help, basically essentially replacing Gaudreau. But on Mangiapane, for example, gets a new contract. He's probably going to play a more prominent role as well. I think their middle 6 and their bottom 6, like depending on how you want to look at it, could use a little bit more help. They're definitely going to have 1, maybe 2 rookie contracts in there. I think Peltier is a potential player you can look at in that regard, but there's not. I don't know. To me, like they're a little thin on experience in that bottom 6. I wouldn't be shocked if they were able to either trade a defenseman to create some space, and then either make another trade or signing or something to bring somebody in that could help in that regard. I think Valimaki's probably the most likely defenseman. He certainly fell out of favor with Daryl Sutter before, been very much a spare part, you could say, for the Flames. So I'm not sure that we're going to see them really be able to utilize him, especially with that deep top 6 in front of them. Or do they create a situation to create a little bit more money where they trade a top 6 and they play him more? So we'll have to see as well. But I do think the Calgary Flames are very much in the running here to likely make a D trade, and if they're going to sign Uyghur, or do they trade Uyghur? That's another big question. There's definitely interest in Uyghur. There's no doubt around the league. Should they decide to do that, they might go down that road. I mean, obviously, I do think Uyghur though is better than at least maybe not all their defensemen, but most. So I think they should definitely look at keeping them. If they have like Uyghur and Anderson on that right side for the next number of years, that's a pretty solid top 4 right side. So to me, he's more of a candidate to stay than leave, but somebody's got to go and create some space here. So we'll see where things go on that front. The Team USA for the World Junior Championships coming up here shortly here in early August have named their leadership group, including Brock Faber, who's going to be named team captain here. Of course, the former Los Angeles King, now Minnesota Wild prospect, will be the team captain. The assistant captains will be Sharks prospect Thomas Bordeleau and Hawks prospect Landon Slaggert. So they will wear the A's for Team USA here at the upcoming tournament. Of course, that'll be getting underway next week, so certainly lots to be looking for if you're looking for some hockey in August. It will be a heck of a tournament. You're not going to see the same teams we saw in the December tournament, of course. Things are a little bit different now, and not only in the world, but of course with those players. Many of the players have opted not to return to prepare for NHL camps. There still will be a decent amount to go, but certainly going to be a different group for sure. One contract situation that's not going well is the Dallas Stars and goalie Jake Oettinger, the restricted free agent. Of course, is one of 2 big names that the Stars have to sign, along with 40-goal forward Jason Robertson. They don't have a ton of cap space. I think they have around like $10-11 million. I think it's 11 point something in space to sign these 2 guys, and they should be able to get that done. I would think Robertson's likely looking at maybe $7-8 million bucks. It sounds like the team would probably like to keep the Oettinger contract probably under $4 million, maybe the 3.5 range. That's just a guess on my part, based on Syed Yousef's reports in The Athletic for the Stars, talking about how negotiations on a contract for Oettinger have essentially gone nowhere. They're kind of at I wouldn't call it a stalemate yet, but certainly doesn't sound like they've been productive in the least. There hasn't been a lot of dialogue. Both sides have made their points and their positions known on where they feel the deal should be. Seems like they're quite a ways apart, and there's not much progress. Of course, right now, where he does not have arbitration rights, I do think the team has more leverage, but it's just, it could drag on, and you hope you don't see it drag on to the point that it creates a training camp holdout or anything of that nature. It's kind of early to say that that's a possibility, but the fact that they're so far apart tells us it's going to take some time, likely, to bridge that gap to get something done. Part of the problem here is that it's the range of comparables. Some say that lack thereof There's not a lot of young goalies like him that have kind of come into their own at that age. Like, for example, there's the Carter Hart contract. There's also the Thatcher Demko contract. Not the exact same scenarios, but close enough. For example, the stats compared to Carter Hart had more games when he got his second contract, but you could say Oettinger has better results, but smaller sample size, right? And then, of course, you've got the Demko situation as well. So it's believed that it's going to be somewhere, most likely between Hart and Demko. So you're looking at $4 to $5 million. Maybe a 3-year deal, maybe a 5-year deal. It's probably what we're looking at. I think Oettinger is more than willing to sign long term if they can go 7-8 years, and he's open. But they're definitely going to have to go to a higher AAV, because I'm sure he and his agent feel like he's going to continue to improve. At 23 years of age, I don't think he probably feels like he's hit a ceiling yet. So there's certainly lots of room to grow and get better. So they're pretty much not much accomplished yet in that regard. If they can get him around $4 million, that still is going to give them around 7 and change or so to sign Robertson, which should be doable, but they could also maybe move some money around a little bit if they have to. But, certainly in a tight situation, trying to get these two big names, big parts of the future signed, and not going so well here so far. On the trade rumor front, of course, we already talked a little bit about trades, especially with Vegas and Calgary likely having to make some cost-cutting trades due to recent signings here in the past 24 hours. But, of course, another team that's likely looking to cut some salary and shave some money off is the Edmonton Oilers. There is rumors that Jesse Puljujarvi, of course, could still possibly be that player. He was in the rumor mill before getting signed. Of course, now he has a short-term deal, $3 million. Still very, very likely a possibility that he could be the player that they chose to move out. There's some talk it could be Tyson Barrie, but many feel that that's a lot less likely given the fact that Duncan Keith retired. They don't want to deplete their blue line any further, so pretty good chance Barrie stays. A couple other names to watch, I guess, besides Puljujarvi is probably Warren Foegele. But I've seen some reports saying that they felt Puljujarvi was more likely than Foegele. So we'll have to see. A lot of it's going to depend on what the interest is in other teams, right? At the end of the day, you can't sell something that nobody wants. So if you can't find a deal that works, then it's going to have to be something different. But there apparently was rumors that the Montreal Canadiens and the Edmonton Oilers did have some trade conversations at the NHL draft this summer around Puljujarvi's potential trade piece. But of course, things never fully materialized. The Habs were having a ton of conversations, as we know. I think they talked to Chicago for sure. They talked to the Islanders. They talked to the Jets. And they were definitely talking to the Oilers, at least to some extent. It's hard to say how serious things got. I'm not sure they really got too serious. It's believed many teams were, the ones that were at least interested to possibly take Puljujarvi off Edmonton's hands, were only offering around a second-round pick. And I could see Montreal maybe doing that. But now they're in a situation where they kind of would need to shave money off somewhere else to bring him in. Edmonton's not going to want to take a contract back. They likely are looking for a pick or prospect or something for the future that's not going to immediately impact their salary cap to get this deal done. And Montreal has plenty of that they could use. There's no doubt. But like I said, they'd have to move out other money, really. They're already in their own tight cap situation, trying to shed money. Of course, they're basically going through a rebuild here. They still haven't signed Kirby Dach either, and that's obviously needs to get done before they have a better idea. So I don't think we're any kind of rush here, but I do wonder if these talks could possibly resume. He's a young enough player in a project situation that Montreal could take a chance on Puljujarvi if the Oilers really do want to pull the trigger on that kind of trade. But like I said, we'll have to see if the Habs free up other money, which I know they're interested in doing anyways, regardless if anybody else comes in or not. So keep an eye on that situation as the summer goes along. Like I mentioned, the Los Angeles Kings are another team that can move a defenseman here. If everybody's healthy, they have about 8 to 9 quality players. Now, of course, 2 or 3 of these guys are still fairly young, don't have a ton of experience. There's a few that even need new contracts, including Sean Durzi. Eric Stevens of the Athletics reporting that the Kings, who are now tight on space at $1.5 million under the cap, could very well trade a defenseman because they have more than enough. Plus, they have more coming. They do have a plethora of good, solid young D prospects, or at least they look like good ones right now. And it's quite likely we could see somebody move. He lists Tobias Bjornfoot, Sean Walker, or Sean Durzi as potential trade targets. Of course, Durzi himself, like I said, needs a new deal. I would think that Durzi out of the three would probably be the least likely. But, if I'm a team looking for a right shot defenseman, you want somebody who's, on the younger side of things, cost control, not going to cost you a fortune, I'd be giving LA a call. Like, I know that teams like, Ottawa, for example, have been linked to like Chychrun and Uyghur. Maybe they could consider a cheaper alternative here on a younger player who could fit with their core. I'm not saying he's the perfect fit, but there's certainly plenty of teams. That's just an example of other teams too, like them, that want somebody who can ease into a top four role on the right side. He'd be perfect. But at the same time, like I said, you get these other guys in there that could be potential movement as well. So certainly watch for the Los Angeles Kings here. Like I said, they got more than enough other D on the way, including Brent Clark, who we're likely going to see the World Championships here, World Junior Championships, playing for Canada. Didn't make the team the first time around, did this time, so see how much of an opportunity is for him to shine on the international stage. And another team we want to look at here briefly is Toronto. Latest articles on The Athletic from James Myrtle talking about some cost-cutting moves there as well. Most of the trades and teams we're looking at nowadays are heavily involved in cost-cutting deals now that teams have completed a big chunk of their offseason business. A lot of teams are either over the cap and have no choice but to shed money, or they're right at the limit and want a little bit extra flexibility. And Toronto is no exception to that rule. So I still believe that Alex Kerfoot is the most likely player to go in a cost-cutting type of trade, that the signing of Calle Jarnkrok very well signaled maybe the end of his time in Toronto. Similar player, although you can make an argument that Jarnkrok, of course, is a little bit older and maybe not quite as productive offensively. So is it really an upgrade? I don't know if it's an upgrade. I think it could be. It's more about money and term than anything else. They probably figure, for the next number of years, he's going to be a more cost-effective player for them than Kerfoot. I think that's really what it boils down to. I don't know that they probably view it on Toronto's end as being lateral. I would think it's a downgrade. Not substantial, but definitely for sure. I mean, to an extent. But Alex Kerfoot, I think, would generate a fair bit of good interest on the market. But the problem is now, like I said, is a lot of teams have completed their business. There's not a lot of teams with cap space. You need to, in a lot of cases, find an old-fashioned hockey trade, and we'll see. Now, of course, the other player in Toronto that's been expected to move is Justin Hall, but I do think that there's a good chance that they hold on to Hall for the time being until they get their situation with Rasmus Sandin resolved. He's still not signed. There's still a lot of belief he's playing hardball on a contract because he does not see a spot on the blue line where he can play. He feels he's earned a right to be an NHL everyday defenseman, being a top six. And they brought in Giordano late in the season and then re-signed him. They still have Muzzin. They still have Riley. Of course, so there's your three left D playing ahead of him. And where's he going to fit? They've already got a guy like Brody playing on his weak side. They're not going to want to have another one. Plus, besides that, they have Timothy Liljegren as well. And they will need Justin Hall at this point. If, as a seventh, or, they kind of be around as a 6-7 D in case Sandin can't go. I mean, it's going to create an imbalance for the lefties and righties, but it's still a scenario that, he's an NHL defenseman with a decent amount of experience that they could put in there if need be. But at the same time, I think it's possible they're holding on to that just until they get that resolved. I mean, at some point, you could maybe see a threat of an offer sheet, but I'm not convinced Sandin really wants to leave. But at the same time, he might change his mind and feel that way if he doesn't see an opportunity where he can play. But, it's hard to say how that's going to go. We're still lots of time in the offseason, but certainly been no updates on getting that resolved and kind of mending that relationship with Sandin to show that there's a spot. We want you. We see you as an NHL defenseman. Let's get a deal done and so on from there. I thought they might move it to another defenseman, creating more of a spot for him by now, but that has not opened up. So that's definitely a situation to watch for sure. Like I said, with Kerfoot, if we see a deal, there's definitely teams out there looking for forward help that we know would want a contract that's not overly expensive. That could very well be in the mix. Like I know a team like Minnesota is looking for somebody, but again, they'd have to have ideally money go out. The Leafs may not be able to make that work, so that might not be a fit. but there's certainly other teams too. So look for possible trade from the Leafs. I'm thinking probably closer to training camp though, once they have a little bit better idea exactly what they're dealing with and if they're going to have Sandin in camp or where that stands. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.